Wife vanished, with a note saying she found her soulmate and our marriage was boring, but 48 hours later her panic calls begged me to save our ranch life again. I, 31 male, came home early from a livestock auction in Denver in mid-October. The event was supposed to run through the weekend, but prices were trash and barely any quality stock was moving. I decided to bail early Thursday afternoon, thinking I'd surprise my wife, Vicky, 29 female, with dinner at this fancy steakhouse she'd been dropping hints about for months. We desperately needed the time together. We'd been married for 5 years, together for almost 8. Things had definitely shifted between us lately, not openly hostile, just different. That subtle change when someone's heart isn't in it anymore, but they're still going through the motions. The minute I pulled up our long gravel driveway, something felt off. Her car was there, but no lights were on despite the early evening shadows stretching across the property. Our Australian shepherd, Tucker, didn't come running out to greet me like he always did. I stepped inside, and it was way too quiet. Our farmhouse was never silent. Vicky always had some home renovation show playing, her favorite country playlist going, or she was FaceTiming loudly with her friends. This was cemetery quiet. I called her name twice. Nothing. I started walking through the house. A renovated 1920s farmhouse on a 15-acre ranch we'd bought 3 years ago, when land outside the city was still reasonably priced. The first thing I noticed was her favorite designer jacket missing from the antique coat rack by the door, the one I'd saved up 3 months to buy her last Christmas. Then her riding boots were gone. The key hook where her personalized keychain usually dangled was empty. As I made my way upstairs, each step on our creaky pine floors felt heavier than the last. Our bedroom closet was half empty, hangers askew like someone had grabbed armfuls of clothes in a hurry. All her designer outfits, gone. Her expensive makeup had vanished from the bathroom counter we'd just installed last month. Her nightstand was cleared of the romance novels she devoured weekly. Then I spotted it, a note on our kitchen island, written in her perfect cursive on the personalized stationery her mother had given her. Found someone who really gets me. He's my soulmate. This boring marriage isn't working anymore. Moved in with him. Lawyer will contact you about divorce stuff. Just like that. 5 years of marriage ended with a hastily scribbled note. No explanation, no apology, nothing but cold dismissal, like I was some random guy she'd met at a bar. The strangest part? I didn't explode. I should have been punching walls, calling her nonstop, doing something dramatic. Instead, I sat at our reclaimed wood kitchen table, feeling oddly calm, and called my attorney, then my older brother Mike. Deep down, I think I'd been preparing for this moment for months, without admitting it to myself. The changes in Vicky had been subtle but consistent. It started when she befriended Stacy, her new coworker at the real estate office. Stacy, the walking midlife crisis wrapped in Lululemon, 2 divorces, 3 sugar daddies, and 1 fake business. If bad influence was a person, it would be her. She drove a leased Mercedes she couldn't afford and constantly posted those inspirational quotes about leveling up and knowing your worth. Within weeks of their friendship, Vicky changed her hair from natural brown to platinum with pink streaks, overhauled her wardrobe, and started talking about how we needed to upgrade our lifestyle. Suddenly, my wife was spending $400 on Botox, buying designer purses I'd never heard of, and coming home after midnight from girls' nights, smelling like she'd doused herself in perfume. She'd started making mysterious weekend work trips to show properties that never seemed to result in actual sales. I once checked her calendar out of curiosity. 3 showings at luxury condos, all with Stacy tagged as backup agent. Except the office didn't know anything about those listings. Apparently backup agent also meant drinks and spa selfies. Our intimacy vanished completely. If I tried to kiss her, she'd turn her cheek. Any attempt at romance was met with excuses about headaches or being tired. Then came the comments about our boring rural lifestyle, how we never did anything exciting, how her friends lived in luxury condos while she was stuck playing farmer on our ranch. A buddy once told me, if her best friend's a wreck, she's just on a delay. I should have listened. Stacy was the warning label and I ignored it. Meanwhile, I was working 60-hour weeks managing livestock auctions across 3 states, coming home to feed horses, fix fencing, and maintain the property while she was networking at upscale bars with Stacy and her divorced friends. I even took on extra weekend auctions to save for the kitchen renovation she'd been begging for. Finished it last month. Apparently not enough to keep her interested. Mike arrived 45 minutes after I called, even though he lived an hour away. He brought a stack of pizzas, though food was the last thing on my mind. He's 5 years older, settled with twins and a steady construction business, always the steady one watching out for me. He examined the note silently, then offered to go find her. Protective, big brother mode engaged. I shook my head. We sat on the wraparound porch talking until nearly midnight, him distracting me with stories about his kid's latest soccer tournament and subcontractor drama. When he finally left, promising to return the next day, I wandered through our dark house looking at all the photos still hanging on the walls, hiking in Colorado, ziplining in Mexico for her birthday, standing proudly in front of this house the day we closed. Memories that now felt like scenes from someone else's life. Tucker finally emerged from wherever he'd been hiding and pressed against my leg, sensing something wrong. I scratched behind his ears, grateful for the company. She'd pulled away in small ways that stacked up, late nights out, dodging affection with excuses, headaches, exhaustion. I kept reaching for something that wasn't there anymore. Turns out I'd been sleeping next to a stranger with a 5-year exit plan. My lawyer, Dan, is a former rodeo champion who rode with my dad back in the 90s. He transitioned to real estate law after a bad fall, broke his pelvis, and helped us purchase the ranch. 15 acres with the renovated farmhouse about 30 minutes outside city limits. We nabbed it for $380,000, an absolute steal even 3 years ago. Property values in our county have nearly doubled since 4 major tech companies started building campuses nearby, bringing waves of California transplants with cash to burn. I drove to Dan's office first thing Friday morning, skipping the auction wrap-up I was supposed to attend. His office is a time capsule. Weathered cowboy chairs with brass-tack details, faded photos of him on legendary bulls at the '92 National Finals Rodeo, a mounted 12-point buck from his 50th birthday hunt. The place smells like leather conditioner, coffee, and old paperwork. Dan was surprised to see me. I explained everything, the note, the missing clothes, the complete blindside. I told him I needed to protect the ranch. He nodded and pulled up our property documents. After several minutes searching county records, his expression changed. "Well, I'll be damned," he muttered. "According to the records, I was the sole owner of the entire property. Vicky's name wasn't on the deed at all, not as co-owner, not even as a writer." I couldn't believe it. We'd bought it together and used money from both our accounts for the down payment. $42,000 from me, $28,000 from her for the 20% down to avoid PMI. Dan checked 3 separate databases. Everything was in my name only. The deed, the mortgage, the mineral rights. My signature was the only one on any binding document. Made no sense until Dan pointed out that, as a real estate agent, Vicky would have known exactly what she was doing. She had guided the paperwork precisely where she wanted it. The question was why she deliberately kept her name off such a valuable asset. But that wasn't all. Dan discovered she owned another property in her name only, a lakefront cabin purchased roughly 2 years ago for $175,000. My stomach dropped. 2 years ago, we were in the middle of renovating our master bathroom and upgrading the horse stables, eating microwave food for weeks to save on materials. Where had she gotten that kind of money? According to the records, she paid $125,000 cash with a $50,000 mortgage, purchased through an LLC first, then transferred to her personal ownership 6 months later. The more Dan dug, the darker it got. He found a pattern of systematic transfers from our joint checking account to her personal savings over the past 30 months. Never large enough to trigger my attention. 2 on one week, $350 another, $500 around tax refund time, but totaling roughly $22,300 over time. My livestock commission earnings. Quietly funding her secret escape plan. Dan removed his glasses and looked me straight in the eye. He'd handled nearly 500 divorces. This wasn't impulsive. The separate property, the hidden transfers, keeping her name off my assets. This was calculated. Vicky had always handled our finances. She said I was too disorganized. I hadn't thought much of it until now. "What do we do?" I asked, feeling like the world's biggest fool and strangely relieved at the same time. "Nothing," Dan said with a small knowing smile. "We wait. She'll contact you the minute she talks to a lawyer and realizes the ranch is solely in your name. If I'm right, she's been counting on you having to sell and split the proceeds." Exactly 48 hours after I found the note, my phone exploded. Calls, texts, voicemails, all from Vicky, starting at 10:15 Sunday morning. I was out in the east pasture fixing a section of fence Tucker had discovered was loose enough to squeeze through when the notifications started flooding in, each more urgent than the last. The first voicemail was all business, the same tone she used with potential buyers. She needed to discuss the ranch immediately. By the second, irritation crept in about why I wasn't answering. The third was desperate. We needed to move quickly on selling before the winter market slowdown. The fourth accused me of being childish. By the sixth, her composure had dissolved into pleading, "Can we just talk like adults?" The irony wasn't lost on me. I forwarded every message to Dan without responding. He texted back, "Perfect. Keep radio silence. She's just realizing she miscalculated. Badly. Let her stew." Around 6:30 that evening, Jack Wilcox, Vicky's father, called. Unlike my strained relationship with her mother, Jack and I had genuinely bonded. A retired mechanical engineer, he taught me everything I know about restoring vintage engines. We'd spent countless weekends in his immaculate garage working on his prized '67 Chevy C10 while Vicky and her mom shopped. He was clearly agitated. Vicky was having a complete meltdown, claiming I'd locked her out of her own home and refused to discuss settlement terms. I took a deep breath and laid out the facts. Coming home early, empty closets, the cold note, the hidden lakefront cabin, the systematic draining of our joint account. Complete silence on his end. When he finally spoke, his voice was heavy with disappointment. Apparently, she told her parents we'd been having problems for months and mutually decided to separate. That had become verbally abusive when she brought up dividing assets. They'd been letting her stay in their guest room because she claimed I'd threatened to change the locks. That manipulation made my blood boil, but I kept my tone even. None of it was true. The note was the only communication I'd received. Jack called back 3 hours later. He'd confronted her and shown her a photo of the note I'd texted him. She finally admitted the truth. Jack and his wife didn't support how she'd handled it. "This isn't how we raised her." He explained she'd always had her mother's approach to finances, secretive separate accounts, keeping options open. He should have warned me years ago when she insisted on separate bank accounts, even after marriage. Her mother had pulled similar stunts early in their marriage until he found secret credit cards and threatened divorce. The parallel explained everything. When Jack asked my plans, I told him honestly I was still figuring it out, but I definitely wasn't selling the ranch. This was supposed to be our forever home, and I still wanted it for myself. "Don't blame you one bit," he replied. Between us, he thought I was getting the better end of the deal. That new guy, Jason something, who'd picked her up yesterday in a leased European sports car and wore more jewelry than Jack's wife, old man intuition said he wasn't in it for the long haul. Curiosity got the better of me that night. Stacy's Instagram was full of thinly veiled posts, photos of her and Vicky at expensive restaurants with captions like, "Upgrading her life," and "Men never know what they had until it's gone." The audacity was stunning from a 38-year-old woman who'd burned through 2 marriages and was rumored to be dating her married boss. I disabled all my social accounts and sat on the porch swing with Tucker. He'd been unusually clingy since she left, despite her constantly complaining about his shedding and banishing him to the mudroom when her sophisticated friends visited. Dogs have better instincts than we give them credit for. 3 weeks after the note, Vicky's car came flying up the driveway, kicking up gravel and dust. She looked different. Blonde, hair freshly highlighted, designer jeans tucked into expensive boots that had never seen actual farm work, chunky jewelry that probably cost more than our monthly mortgage, playing the part of the sophisticated city girl who'd outgrown her country husband. "We need to talk about the ranch," she demanded. "No, hello." I kept hammering fence posts. "Did you hear me? We need to discuss selling this place. My lawyer says we need to list immediately." I finally looked up. "Nothing to discuss. It's not for sale." Her perfectly made-up face twisted in confusion. "What do you mean it's not for sale? We have to divide assets." I pulled another post from the truck bed. "Ryan, stop being difficult. We both know we need to sell and split the money. I've already talked to my broker." I stayed silent another minute while she grew nervous. Finally, I said, "You should probably check the property records before making plans." "What are you talking about? Ranch isn't in your name, never was. You made sure of that when we bought it." The confusion on her face was almost comical. "That's not possible. We bought it together." I shrugged. "Deed says different. So does the mortgage. Check for yourself." Her face cycled through disbelief, confusion, then dawning horror. "But we both paid the down payment." "Yep. And you arranged all the paperwork so everything was in my name only. Guess you outplayed yourself." That's when the tone switched. Suddenly she was sweet and reasonable, following me around the pasture like a lost puppy, asking if we could talk like adults. When that didn't work, she tried guilt. Didn't I remember how we found this place together, how she designed the kitchen? I finally stopped. "You mean like how you supported me by stealing $22,000 from our joint account, or secretly buying a lakefront cabin while I ate ramen to save for renovations?" She tried to claim the cabin was an investment she was going to surprise me with once it appreciated. I asked why she hid all the paperwork then. Her eyes snapped to mine. "You've been checking up on me, like I'm the one who did something wrong. Wouldn't have had to if you hadn't been stealing from me." She flinched at the word stealing and tried to claim the money was partially hers. I reminded her that her paycheck went into her personal account while only my income went into the joint one. So no, it really wasn't. The truth hit her. I knew everything. She tried another angle. Jason was going to help with cabin repairs, but his company was having cash flow issues and she was counting on her share of the ranch sale to fix everything. Not my problem, I said. Maybe your soulmate isn't as financially stable as you thought. Her face hardened. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Nope. Just following the legal documents you arranged. Funny how that worked out. She tried everything after that, called me vindictive. Said she deserved compensation for putting up with living so far from the city. I reminded her bank statements showed I'd paid for 80% of everything while she secretly stashed cash. What you didn't plan for, I told her, was leaving before land values peaked. Wait another year, and this place would be worth another $150,000. Shitty timing on your part. She threatened weakly to get a lawyer. I told her I already had one. She stormed back to her car, shouted, "This isn't over," and peeled out. I changed all the locks and codes that same day, called Dan with the update, and started planning my next moves carefully. The thing about livestock auctions is you learn to read people, when they're bluffing, when they're desperate, when they're trying to drive the price up artificially. Vicky thought she was clever, but she was broadcasting desperation like a neon sign. Dan's advice: don't respond to anything without running it by him first. She'd try to get verbal agreements, texts, anything in writing she could use later. Don't fall for it. I spent the weekend documenting everything of value: furniture, appliances, tools, photos, receipts, establishing what was mine before she could claim it. In the process, I found a hidden shoebox of jewelry I'd never seen, credit card statements in her name for hotels I'd never visited. The evidence of her double life was everywhere once I looked. The text slowed, then stopped when she realized I wasn't replying. Her dad called again to apologize and say they weren't giving her money. She made her bed. Through mutual friends, I learned her soulmate Jason was a flashy developer who just finalized his own divorce, leveraged to the eyeballs on failing projects. Their relationship hit the rocks the moment he realized she wasn't bringing ranch sale money to bail him out. 2 weeks after she left, I received formal divorce papers. Interestingly, no claim on the ranch, just division of other assets and a request for $3,200 monthly spousal support due to her significantly lower income. Dan laughed. We had records showing she made almost as much as me but hid most of it. While sorting files, I found her loan application for the cabin listing income 40% higher than on our joint taxes. Tax fraud. I kept that in my back pocket. Dan's philosophy: sometimes the best revenge is letting someone self-destruct. From everything I was hearing, she and Jason were headed that way with or without my help. Instead of fighting over small stuff, I let her have the furniture she wanted and even the newer SUV. Dan thought I was too generous, but I wanted the divorce finalized quickly. Fighting over couches would drag it out. Mike wasn't happy. Feels like you're letting her win. I explained I was keeping what mattered: the ranch, my retirement, my tools. She could have the IKEA furniture and the car with 60,000 miles on it. I kept working, kept my head down, let her think I was rolling over because I was hurt. Meanwhile, I documented every financial discrepancy I found. 4 months later, the divorce was nearly final. I converted her old home office into a workshop for restoring vintage motorcycle parts, my side business finally taking off now that I had time. The ranch started feeling like mine again. I repainted the living room dark green, the color she'd always hated, bought a leather couch, let Tucker sleep on the bed. Small changes that made the place a home. I ran into Stacy at the grocery store about 5 months after Vicky left. She looked uncomfortable. I casually asked how Vicky was doing. Stacy lied badly, really good, loving her new life. I smiled and asked how Jason's development company was holding up, mentioning the liens and foreclosures. She practically ran away. I knew the info would get back to Vicky within the hour. 8 months after she left, everything fell into place better than I could have scripted. Jason's company filed for bankruptcy protection. The cabin was condemned due to foundation issues. Essentially, worthless. The IRS sent her a 3-year audit notice. Anonymous tips are a beautiful thing? I literally ran into her at the grocery store. She looked rough, nothing like the polished woman who'd stormed the ranch months earlier. After awkward greetings, she asked if we could talk. Against my better judgment, I agreed. We sat in my truck in the parking lot. I've made some bad decisions, she admitted, voice shaking. No shit. Broke down. Told me how Jason convinced her to invest $30,000, partly from selling jewelry I'd bought her, in his latest failing project. How the cabin was worthless, how the IRS was after her for unreported income. I don't know what to do, Ryan. I'm drowning. I let the silence sit. Part of me felt satisfaction, karma in real time. Another part, the part that had loved her for 8 years, just felt hollow. Finally, she whispered, "Could I maybe stay in the guest room for a few weeks until I get back on my feet?" I almost laughed. "So you leave me with a note, try to take half my property, and now you want my help?" She claimed she was desperate. Parents wouldn't talk to her. Jason was gone. Stacy ghosted her because she couldn't afford nights out anymore. I pulled out a folder I happened to have in the truck and handed it to her. Bank transfers, tax discrepancies, loan applications, everything. Her face went white when she realized I was the audit tip. She begged me not to send anything else. She could lose her license, face charges. Should have thought of that before stealing $22,000. "What do you want?" she asked, defeated. "Nothing. That's the beauty of it. I've already won." She admitted she'd been stupid, that Stacy convinced her she was missing out, that she deserved a more glamorous life. Turns out boring and stable beats exciting and broke every time. She asked if I thought I'd ever forgive her. "Don't know. Doesn't really matter. We're done either way." The final papers were signed the next week. No alimony, no claims on anything of mine. Last I heard, she sold the cabin at a massive loss. Lost her real estate license temporarily because of the tax issues. And at 29 moved back in with her parents. Jack confirmed it when we met up to work on his truck. "She's humbled," he said, handing me a wrench. "Never thought I'd see the day." The ranch is thriving. I've added 3 boarders for extra income. The motorcycle restoration business is taking off. It's peaceful now, just me, Tucker, the horses, and friends over for dinner sometimes. It's not the life I thought I'd have, but it's a good one. Turns out sometimes the worst things that happen to you lead to the best places you'll ever be, and sometimes the trash really does take itself out. Looking back 8 months later, sitting on the same porch where I once felt my world collapse, I'm surprised by how little anger is left in me. There's no triumphant "I told you so" burning in my chest anymore. What's left is mostly quiet, a deep, steady quiet I never knew before Vicky left. Some nights, I still catch myself listening for her footsteps on the creaky pine floors, or expecting to hear one of her renovation shows in the background. The silence used to feel like punishment, now it feels like healing. Tucker sleeps sprawled across the bed that used to be too good for dog hair, and I let him. I fall asleep to the sound of horses moving in the paddock and coyotes in the distance, instead of arguments I never saw coming. I won't lie and say it didn't hurt. There were weeks when the betrayal sat on my chest like a feed sack I couldn't lift. But somewhere between fixing fences alone and watching the sunrise paint the barn red every morning, the pain turned into something useful. It carved out space for a version of me I'd forgotten existed. The guy who could run a ranch, rebuild a carburetor, and still laugh with his brother over cheap beer on Friday nights. I don't hate Vicky anymore. I almost pity her. But even that feels too heavy to carry. She's someone else's problem now, someone else's lesson. What she taught me is priceless. Peace isn't boring. Loyalty isn't old-fashioned. And a quiet life you actually own is worth more than any flashy lie. The ranch isn't just land anymore. It's proof that when everything fake gets stripped away, what's real is still standing. I'm still standing. And for the first time in years, I'm genuinely excited to see what tomorrow looks like. Just me, Tucker, and 15 acres that are finally, truly mine.